Please adopt a comfortable, relaxed posture. So I will, on my side, share whatever I feel might be useful and practical in your life with a good intention in my mind. So one thing we can all acknowledge is we are all humans. So as humans, we have the natural intelligence to know what is harmful and what is useful or beneficial. That distinction we are able to know. So then, having acknowledged that we do have the distinction, we're able to know, what is the distinction between harm and benefit, or help or benefit. Then when that is extended towards others, helping others and refraining from harming others, that actually would be what we would call the essence of the Buddha's teachings. When the Buddha would have given many teachings, such as sutras and tantras, but when it's all combined into the essence, it is explained that it comes into this point of refraining from harming others and engaging to benefit others. That is the essence. And that the reason why this comes into being the really essence of the Buddha's teachings on a practical level is to understand and acknowledge that all beings, all beings naturally wish to be happy, and there's no one or no particular being that wishes to experience any kind of misery or suffering. And so, in that regards, we are actually all the same. It is not as if some humans or some other living beings, intentionally want to suffer and don't want to be happy, and some want to be happy and don't want to be suffering. In fact, in terms of wishing to be happy and not wishing to experience any kind of misery, we're all the same. So, therefore, it is on that basis that it is said that when we apply the means of practice of benefiting others and refraining from harming others, that is something which everyone can relate to. That is something really everyone can relate to, and thus it becomes really the basis for one's practice. So, thus, on a personal level, it will be really worthwhile to really keep that in mind, to never forget this essential sort of point of that at best one can help, whenever one can benefit others, that one engages in doing that, but at the very least not to hurt or harm others. That, to hold that in one's mind, never to forget, that is on a personal level most important. And so we can be reminded by the earlier point that that is the reason why we incorporate this in ourselves, of which helping others as much as we can, and not hurting others, is because of the reason that there's no one who wishes to experience any misery, and everyone would like to be happy. So if you can contribute to that, that is worthwhile.
So the Pemban again, never met Rola Pemban the Senate. Roland never the Senate is
Now, in relation to oneself, as mentioned earlier, since we naturally wish to be happy and do not wish to experience any kind of suffering, any kind of harm, then it will be worthwhile to begin on a personal level to really sort of investigate, to investigate and find out, what is it that will help or benefit oneself? What is it that harms oneself? So it is worthwhile to think about this.
That's all the Roland Pemban, the other. Roland never the That's all you.
So that what benefits oneself in essence is happiness, and what harms oneself in essence is suffering. So that is what.
There we go. Yeah, Pemban. This petting on the other. This net. You want
So this is something we can all acknowledge again, that what helps us for our well-being is happiness, and what actually hurts us or harms us is really suffering, misery. That is something we can all experience. So the next thing then to understand is that one's happiness does not, the happiness that one wishes for is dependent on causes and conditions, and likewise the suffering one experiences depends on cause and conditions. That means that one's happiness and suffering does not come about just randomly without any reason, but has its particular cause and conditions.
Yeah. That did just Saraje. That did just Saraje, that Garrison, that did Saraje, motion, that did the joke. They just motion, that joke. You need your motion, that pop. They are doing pass it. They are doing pass it. They did just doing pass it, doing the cash. That's a motion.
So thus, since happiness depends on its own causes and conditions, and likewise suffering depends on its own causes and conditions, what we need to do further to establish the well-being for oneself is to be able to really identify and recognize what are the causes for one's own happiness, and having understood that, putting effort into acquiring those causes for one's own happiness, and then likewise, by recognizing and understanding what are the causes for one's suffering, one needs to overcome or avoid the causes for one's own suffering. That is what we need to do. So when we understand this, then we are actually beginning to understand the very sort of basis or root of what we call a spiritual practice, a Dharma practice. So it is in this way that when one further expands one's understanding, one comes to understand that the causes for one's happiness is what we call virtue, and the causes for one's own suffering is what we call non-virtue. And so that distinction between virtue and non-virtue is what we need to then further understand. So thus, with this understanding, then what we need to actively engage in is acquiring virtues, adopting virtuous deeds, and avoiding non-virtues or negativity, negative deeds. That is what we call the practice of adopting and discarding, adopting that which is useful and discarding which is harmful.
대 등에 좀 바빠서라 제나는 너무 정말 많이 비춰지잖아. 나는 말이 많아서 걸치고 다들 노바컬을 통로 많이 비춰지 때문에 있어. 아, 내가 다 잡지 이제.
So then when we further investigate as to what initiates us to engage either in virtue or engage in non-virtue, then actually if we really look, when we further investigate into that, we actually come to understand that it is actually our state, mind, mental state. It's an intention in our mind which causes us to either engage in virtue, or again, because of a particular state of mind or intention, it initiates us to engage in non-virtue or negativity. So then, now to explain a little bit further into what you could call the unique presentation of the Buddha's teachings, is that real initiator of non-virtue or negativity, when we really look, go further into our mental state and looking into the real cause, the main cause, then according to the Buddha's teachings, it is explained that what is called the misconception or ignorance or grasping to itself is what is the cause, the main cause for all our negativity. So this is just to introduce that, and we will not have time to go further into explaining that. So with this explanation, one comes to understand that one's happiness or suffering is not dependent on external conditions, not only dependent on external circumstances, but really ultimately it depends on one's own internal conditions, which is our own state of mind. So thus, in summary again, once we understand that adopting virtuous deeds or good deeds is the cause for one's own happiness, and adopting or engaging in negative deeds, non-virtuous or negative deeds, is the cause for one's own suffering, once we come to understand that and thus begin to adopt our life, make our life in accordance to adopting virtue and avoiding non-virtuous deeds or negative deeds, then that is what we would call the basis. We have established the basis to really understand and implement the practice of what we call as karma. That is the essence of what we call karma. So thus, to expand a little bit further again, the understanding of karma is that once we have the understanding of karma, which in other way is the law of cause and effect, when one has a good understanding, not only an understanding but the real conviction that adopting good deeds, virtuous deeds, results into positive, good consequences. Engaging in negative deeds brings about negative consequences. When one has a real sort of conviction in that it is what we call incontrovertible, which means that it is unfading. That if one engages in virtue, the results are definitely positive results. If one engages in negativity, the results are definitely a negative result. So that infallibility or that unfading consequences of the cause and effect of karma, when one has a good conviction in that, then we can say that one has established the real sort of basic practice of the Buddhist teachings. And so that in fact becomes then the real protection for oneself, one's own mind. Understanding and implication of the law of karma becomes the ultimate protection for one's mind. So that's how we can even understand. So thus, on the basis of the understanding of karma, one can then implement the earlier point, which is benefiting others, intentionally engaging in benefiting others, and avoiding to harm others. So thus the reason why the understanding of karma becomes a impetus for one to benefit others or help others and avoiding to harm others is because the wish to benefit, the wish to help others, or I should say, the actual help for others, the way that we extend help to others is preceded by the wish to benefit others. And likewise, the harm that we give to others is preceded by the wish to harm others. So one has that wish to benefit others on the basis of understanding that if one benefits others, it actually not only helps the other, but actually helps oneself too. And likewise, if one harms others, intentionally harms others, then actually one will be harmed oneself. So that is the understanding one gets from the karma, the understanding of karma. So therefore, on that basis, when one has the genuine wish to benefit others, the practical benefit also for oneself is that oneself is benefited. And whilst when one harms others, it will actually harm oneself. And that is again based on the infallibility of karma. As mentioned previously, the very natural law or natural consequences of karma is that if you engage in deeds which are harmful to others, harmful deeds, one will be harmed. If one engages in beneficial deeds or helpful deeds, one will be benefited oneself. So thus, on that basis, as mentioned earlier, one can come to understand that these are very practical ways for one's own well-being. So, as I mentioned regularly, it is really good to have that basic understanding that if one harms others, one will be harmed oneself. If one intentionally harms others, one will be harmed oneself. Likewise, when one actually benefits others with good intentions, then one will be benefited oneself. So this is in Losang Yeshe. So with this understanding, with understanding that if harming others will eventually harm oneself, one will then be able to stop. It will stop one from harming others. And if one, with understanding that benefiting others will help oneself, it will actually initiate one to actually actively benefit others. So in this way, actually, when we think about the sort of basis of most religions, and the most authentic religions will definitely have the basis of giving the instructions or teachings about how to benefit others, how to help others, and not to harm others. So it is in this way that we can come to understand, we can very easily acknowledge that every religion, authentic religion, really it serves the purpose of making humans to be good human, to engage, for humans to conduct good mannerisms, good behaviors, good deeds, and particularly in relation to the three ways of how to engaging in good or bad deeds are through our what we call body, speech, and mind. So therefore, engaging in good deeds through our body, speech, and mind means physically engaging in ways that can be helpful to others, assisting others on a physical way, through our speech, using speech which is conducive, which are pleasant for others and not hurtful, and then through our mind, having good intentions and good thoughts, which again, as mentioned earlier, it stems from our state of mind. With a good intention of mind, then our physical speech, our physical activities and our verbal speech will also be conducive and beneficial for others. So it is in this way that we can see that when we engage in virtue through our body, speech, and mind, then that becomes the most conducive way to benefit others. So now, on a personal level, for one's own practice, it is good to understand that, to acknowledge that, what goes with us at all times, we can say that our most intimate, how should we say it? Intimate companion, we could say, is our mind. Our mind is something that will go wherever we go. We're never separated from our mind. Inseparable. We are inseparable from our mind. So that is a fact that we can acknowledge. So now, having acknowledged that, it is then important for our own well-being that the mind that we go with, the mind that associates us, that we associate with, and is our companion, is a positive mind. Is what we can call a positive mind, again, a virtuous mind. Then that is really most important. So if we can ensure that we are always accompanied with a positive and a virtuous mind, then that is what will assist us. Our companion will never fail us. That is how we should understand.
새 정보, 새 야구, 개 새들 소설라, 새 제래, 새 시권이와 다 대하고, 대하고 저런 데들과 나중에 새는 시대 용화돼. 아래는 새는 뭐지 찾는 새는 시대 용화. 새 말을 찾는 새는 뭐야? 뭐 야구 쳐. 뭐 야구 쳐.
So thus, if you really investigate in this way, and you think about in this way, then actually it starts to become really useful, beneficial. You begin to really establish the means to how to really take care of oneself, for one's well-being. Because when we are in a virtuous state of mind, or positive and virtuous state of mind, naturally one's mind will become more calm. And then along with that calmness, one's mind will become more peaceful. So indeed, so we all wish for peace within ourselves. So what really contributes to our peaceful state of mind is a calm and genuinely relaxed state of mind. That is what brings about peace in our mind. Otherwise, what actually, in contrast to that, what disturbs our mind, disturbs our peace, is the negative state of mind that causes disturbance in our mind. So this is something we need to acknowledge. So thus, it is in this way, in a very simple way, when we begin to really acknowledge and understand within ourselves that it is one's virtuous state of mind, positive state of mind, that bring about the good consequences for oneself, that contributes to one's well-being, whereas the negative state of one's own negative state of mind is what actually brings about negative consequences for oneself, is detrimental to one's own well-being. So when we have this good understanding, then this is something that we will be able to understand through our own experience. From one's own experience, one will be able to understand that the real causes for one's own well-being, or one's, disturbances, lies within oneself. And so that acknowledgement, that understanding is something which is really paramount for one's own, to secure one's own well-being, for one's own, paramount and most essential for one's well-being. Because, it is not something that, you have to use a lot of reasonings or logic that someone has to prove to you, but when it becomes one's own experience, then one will naturally take more responsibility for one's own well-being. Thus, one will take more responsibility to adopt a more positive state of mind, because knowing that that is the really main cause for one's own well-being. Whereas one will make a little bit more effort in overcoming the negative state of mind, the very sort of negative and unruly state of mind which causes one all angst, knowing that that is the cause for one's own angst, all the troubles that one experiences, the real cause is one's own negative state of mind, then one will take the responsibility oneself to minimize and make effort to overcome the negative state of mind. So this is how we begin to take our own responsibility for our own well-being in one's life.
호동도 호동이 호동도 호녀서는 셔서를 편성해 호동도 호동들은 지바시는 롤내바시 받대 해만 롤라 해만 내바시 받대 실로 저거만 생들이야 봐야 보게 뭐지를 다 대비식으로 세야되죠 내비식으로 세야 봐 니줄 봐도 한곳에 봐서 라사라 때문에 봐 내 맞아 뭐내 마셔 다 소송에는 들이 손을 대지 열애지 때때 다 쳐서 무슨 내가 그런 소송 내가 쳐버 치료지 요한테 소송 통요 해봐 이런 거를 걔는 해봐 이런 거를 해봐 제일 요한테 소송이 저기 그래 맞아 해봐야 내 말을 쓰지 깨자 말을 되지야.
So thus, when one comes to through this, through this understanding, and through one's, most importantly through one's own experience, when one comes to really acknowledge and understand this, then that has become a real, how should we say, the real conviction arises through one's own experience and investigation, rather than having to depend on what others say or what others advise us to do. We will begin to take that initiative to what we call, because of that understanding that is born from one's own investigation, internal investigations, and one's own experience, one will then take the initiative to adopt the means for one's well-being oneself, take that responsibility oneself, which is, again, in summary, to adopt the positive qualities, the positive state of mind. There being numerous positive state of minds, making means, efforts to actually adopt those positive state of minds, and to abandon the negative state of minds. At best, to abandon completely some negative state of mind that disturbs us, that brings about, how should we say, like inner conflict and disturbance within ourselves. To completely abandon them is the best, but if not, then to gradually make effort to start to minimize the impact of those negative state of minds within oneself. So that, when we take that initiative, then we have really established the basis again for one's real, meaningful life. Even within this life, we will begin to see the positive results to experience for ourselves. So that is what we need to come to understand.
네, that's all good. That's all the thing called it. 뭐 내가 다 된대. 소소 뒤손은 소소 뭐냐는 내가 쳐봐야 돼 하고.
So it is in this way, with this understanding, based on this understanding, one will then begin to understand the real significance and purpose of meditation.
가르세 거제들 예세라 컨디션마다 하고서 롱이 세 게세 해서 콜 컨디션 콜 디마시 콜 컨디션마다 서서 해봐야 뭐 토소 그래서 뭐 들을 뭐 야부 심지 그래요.
So that is because what meditation really means, in essence, is to familiarize with virtue, a positive state of mind. So that is what meditation means. So therefore, as mentioned previously, as we become more familiar with a positive state of mind and virtuous state of mind, then naturally our actions, our deeds that are done through our body, speech, and mind will naturally become more positive, more conducive. So it is in this way we need to see the connection or the relationship between the practice of meditation and how it actually makes us to become a better human being and having more, better state of mind.
So 그래서 당사자 시야는 그래서 손을 세를 건지시 그래서 손을 세를 건지 때때 달래 다시 쌓인 것은 동시에 내내 제가 펴서고 얘는 내가 지고 내내 집에 거는 매일 대신 쌓 대마다 때때 뭐지 근데 수업하지 뭘 대신 뭘 설로래 아사지 얘네들은 시대 쌓는 때는 맞들 모시고.
So thus, so as we familiarize with these parts and adopting the positive of mind, which, as mentioned earlier, is the basic essence of what we call the practice of meditation, then we begin to really understand that how, as mentioned before, the meditation practice promotes one to actively engage in benefiting others and refraining from hurting others, harming others. Then, when that is established within oneself and within others, then that is what we would call the very basic root of all happiness. And if we talk about a nation or in the world, the root of happiness, the very basic cause of happiness within one's society or within the world is really that actively, if everyone actively engages in helping others and not hurting others, then that is what establishes really happiness within our world. So this is how we need to understand the relationship.
As a jailer, jail do not send it, they are in it. Somebody did my own mother. Jailer, jail, they are in it, do not send it. Jail, they are in it. Somebody do not send it. You do it. Then, man, jailer can do your own mother. Someone said, the red one. In that, generally, someone killed, that jailer can do. Nese ki kani yel nyaba shiga ten ma mon thege diwa ina yela pen soma ha ji fa ji mo shiga ji ba na ngena tega mo pen to shiwa yo ha ko ji kani ji yo wa ma te yela pen to ba den yel yo wa na ma ya de yo wa sen de lo ti ko kani ro na ko lo ya de yela nyaba shiga ma te wa nese yemen 가서 nese pena kon goda chene yen never should be yoda sample yela pema chene yebe solo goda chene tete yela never should be nese goda ki discipline tete
So earlier it was mentioned of the generating the wish to benefit others. However, when we have to take that a step further, the actual means, the actual engaging of benefiting others, how does that come about? So, it is explained that in order to actually engage in the means to benefit others, one needs to have developed a strong sense of love and compassion within oneself. And so that is because without a strong sense of love and compassion within one's heart, one will not generate that mind of wishing to benefit the other. And so therefore the love and compassion becomes really, as mentioned earlier, the basic motivator for one to actually actively engage in benefiting others. Likewise, that is on the positive side that we need to develop, we need to pay attention on how to develop love and compassion. Then, in contrast to that, the harmful state of mind is what initiates one to engage in actively harming others. When one actually engages in harming others, it is preceded by the mind of harmfulness, the mind of the intention to harm. So, to explain that a bit further, the intention of harming others comes about because, and one actually engages in harming others when one does not see the faults or the ill effects of the harmful state of mind. One, in fact, begins to see that maybe there's some usefulness. One not being able to see the negative consequence, negative consequence of harmful intention. One actually begins to see that, maybe it is good if I can harm others. Maybe it might be useful. It might be actually bring about good consequences. So with that ignorance in one's mind of not being able to see the ill effects or faults of harmful intention, one actively engage, follows the harmful intention, which leads to harmful actions, harmful deeds upon others. And so it is in this way that we need to understand that the harm that one causes others, and what I see that when we see in this world that so many harm others, create so much destruction and harmful of others, it is I believe it is because they have not seen the harmful intention, the mind of harmfulness as being a fault. So thus, in summary, as I mentioned previously, if we can, with this understanding, then one begin to understand that the real good friend, an inner friend, that the real what we call good or inner friend or companion is the positive state of mind, the positive state of mind and the virtuous state of mind. So that, as explained in more detail earlier, one can begin to acknowledge that and thus befriend, to really cherish that inner friend, to really cherish and nurture that inner friend, just as we would cherish the external friends. We can, we pay attention of, checking out whether the external friend is good or not, and then when we find that they're good, we cherish them, we nourish them. So likewise, it is good also to do that, most importantly, with our inner friend, an inner companion. So thus, again, with to understand the main point of the meditation practice is that meditation, as mentioned earlier, when one understands that the meditation practice is a means to familiarize one's mind with positiveness, with virtue, then how should we say, that understanding will encourage one to actually engage in meditation practice, because the more we familiarize with the virtuous state of mind and the positive state of mind, the more likely the negative state of mind within oneself will start to weaken. Because we're giving less attention, less power to the negative state of mind, it naturally begins to weaken. And so when the virtuous state of mind becomes established and firm and strong within ourselves, then that is how we are nurturing what we call the inner friend, as mentioned earlier. So now at this point, it will be reasonable to also ask and investigate what is then a virtuous state of mind. We have talked a lot about adopting a virtuous state of mind, a positive state of mind. How can we identify a positive state of mind as opposed to negative state of mind, and what is a negative state of mind? So then, to do this sort of investigation, further investigation, would be really meaningful and useful.
channel so ji sa so ji ga ji ji de ya ji no se le ya ji ku ga le ta tin ko le.
So then, as to try to address that question about what are the virtues, the virtuous state of mind, positive state of mind, what is non-virtuous state of mind. As the Buddha explained, the Buddha had said that actually there are numerous positive or virtuous state of mind, as well as negative state of mind. There's many numbers. However, as a way to condense them in a simple way, to present them in a simple and condensed way, the Buddha had explained that adopting the 10 virtuous deeds, and avoiding the 10 non-virtuous deeds. And so this, in fact, I believe, also serves as a basis for the ethics or moral code of most religious traditions as well. So the Buddha definitely summarized it in this way, that when it's easy to identify what the 10 virtuous deeds are, which is to be adopted, and then the opposites of the 10 virtuous deeds are actually the 10 non-virtuous deeds, and so that is to be abandoned. So thus, as to identify what the 10 non-virtuous deeds are, which then the opposites will be the 10 virtues, they are divided into 3 of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 of mind. So the 3 of the body is killing, taking the life of others, is as the Buddha explained, that is a negative deed, a non-virtuous deed. Next is stealing, or taking what belongs to others without permission. That is what we call non-virtuous deed. And then the third of this body is engaging in sexual misconduct. So to engage in sexual misconduct, adultery, and so forth, this would be a non-negative deed, non-virtuous deed. And so the Buddha had said that to avoid these 3 and adopt it, to consciously avoid these 3 would be then the virtues of the three body on the body. Then in relation to speech, the 4 non-virtuous deeds of the speech are, how should we say, lying, or saying untruthful words. Then the next is divisive speech, engaging in divisive speech, that is the second. And then the third is engaging in harmful or harsh speech, or hurtful speech. And then the fourth is engaging in, how should we say, meaningless gossip, meaningless talk. That is then the fourth, the speech. So then to avoid this 3, 4 would be adopting the virtues of the speech. And then the 3 of the mind is to, what we call the first, harmful intention. Then the next is covetousness, or longing, desiring others' belongings. Then the third is wrong views, holding on to wrong ideas or wrong views. That is are the 3 of the mind.
Doya, Marina, Soja, Ten, Color Macha, I saw that to the soul, Maja, Santiago, Santiago, Madame Mercada, Mokara, Zarches, so Maja, Yavan, for a not come on Marco, that is some other for a minute, for a dance with the red parts, to Pochiara, call it about Masha, they are good at their phones. She then has some good each other some phone.
So thus in this way, when we take this into the practical way that the Buddha explained it, is that the Buddha thus said that killing is a negative deed, and that is because the reason, there has to be a reason for that, the reason is because the life, one's life is the most precious thing that anyone would have. In relation to oneself, one can acknowledge that. Just likewise, for any other living being, the most precious thing they would have is their life. So when you take the life of others, which is the most precious thing, that is the greatest harm, one of the greatest harm that you would do to others. So therefore, when the Buddha established right from the beginning of his advice, he had said, avoid taking the life of others. So we can see here that how the Buddha established the practice of non-violence right from the beginning of his teachings. When he established what we call a basis of morality, a moral code, it begins with avoiding to kill, avoiding to take the life of others, which is the most precious for others. And then, if we can to take that into on a personal level, we can say that as humans, we would all acknowledge that the most precious thing we would have is our life. Then next comes our wealth. So therefore, the Buddha then advised, don't take others' possessions, don't steal, avoid stealing. So then the third would be, after wealth, would be then one's faithful companion. If one is in a relationship, a partner, then one's faithful partner would be another most valuable thing for oneself. So the Buddha said, avoid having sexual relationships with someone else's partner. That would be harmful to the others. So it is in this way that Buddha established really the basis for non-violence, not to harm others, and based on non-harmfulness, then we can see it benefits others. So when you adopt the principle or the practice of refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and so forth, then we can see that brings a great benefit, really benefits the surrounding area. So this is how we can understand in a practical way.
Right. So that I just want to thank you. 소는 대칭 코너 소재까지 지금 다다져야 되잖아요. 거기에 잡고 야채 때려 가서 많이 지나치대. 저로서는 너무 좋은 많이 치료해 보자. 근데 아주 너무들 야 소재까지 걸어오지. 방금 보는 예 세계를 하는 말이야. 세계는 말이야. 진짜 최고야. 나도 쇼레면도 쇼박 쇼레면도 이제 고소는 세자를 내가 손잡아 떼내면서 세자라 패서 소자라 패서 떼내다 뭐 너무 쉬쉬 되면서 그래서 쇼만 이제 거마 타시 예배를 이제 예배를 좀 거마 타셔야 돼 떼내면서 그러면 전적으로 야고 좋았어 이제까지 이제 세자 통제를 패마 세자 패미신 수야했다.
So thus in this way, as mentioned earlier, the practice is to adopt the practice in summary of what we call religious practice or Dharma practice would be to adopt virtue and to avoid non-virtue. So just in explaining the early explanation, one gets some understanding basis of that, what it means to adopt virtue and avoid non-virtues. And so in this way, when we relate it to the 10, adopting the 10 virtuous deeds, which is to actively and consciously avoid the 10 non-virtuous deeds, this then we can see is really something that will benefit, or something that we can see is beneficial for all. Thus we can say it is not a unique Buddhist practice. It is not a practice that is only unique for Buddhists, but in fact, not even other religions, but in fact all humankind will be able to acknowledge this. Will be able to acknowledge that practicing the 10 virtues would be something really worthwhile, something which is beneficial. And so, and then of course, when the Buddha presented this in this practical way, the incomparably kind Buddha had said, furthermore, as to emphasize refraining from harming others and benefiting others, the Buddha had said, for those who wish to follow my advice, who follow me, if you harm others, it'll be equivalent to harming me. And if you engage in ways to benefit others, it will be equivalent to helping me. So this is how the Buddha had taken such great, how should we say, importance. He had shown great importance to his followers of how to really avoid harming other sentient beings. And then, as a way to further develop the means to benefit others, the Buddha had then explained in a very detailed way of how to develop love and compassion. There are these actual methods for developing love and compassion. So we can see that developing love and compassion and really expressing that in a genuine way becomes really the very basis for benefiting others to a great extent. So that is how we need to understand that. So we have now thus understood that on a very basic level, we've understood the need to adopt a virtuous, positive state of mind and avoid a negative state of mind. So thus, it will be worthwhile for us to actually put it into practice for a few minutes by doing some meditation. So the meditation, you have understood the meditation means, the practice of meditation means to familiarize one's mind with virtue. So on that basis, then we can adopt some few minutes of meditation. So that's based on the understanding that we have shared earlier, the reasons for practice meditation. We can now take a few minutes to apply this meditation practice with a sense, with a commitment, in our heart. So as we do regularly, the meditation object that we choose would be our own breath. So choosing the breath has its own significance. So it's a very simple object to focus on. But most importantly, we need to, in order to really make this practice most meaningful and most useful for oneself, we need to intentionally avoid following other distractions, other thoughts for temporarily. Other thoughts or distractions are mostly that we are preoccupied with would be thoughts that cause afflictions in the mind to arise. So therefore, to avoid the thoughts or objects, to think about objects that cause afflictions in one's mind, will then, and thus bringing our mind in focus, just to focus on one object, a neutral object such as our breath, will then help the mind to settle down. not to be affected by the afflictions. And that is how we familiarize our mind, beginning from a neutral object to become more in a virtuous state. So therefore, for the next few minutes, we will bring full attention and full focus just on our natural breathing, mentally observing the breath coming in and going out naturally, and just remain your focus just on that, 100% focus on that. So that's for the next few minutes we will start this meditation. is sufficient for now. So, any questions? So maybe better we spend some time for our picnic. So it seems like I've established a tradition which no one else seems to have, having a teaching session before a picnic. So also like once when I was up in Queensland near Noosa, it occurred to me that people were, most people were out in the sun going, sort of into the beach, without any clothes on, just going to the beach and enjoying the sun. And while I was inside giving a talk for about 2 hours. So some people might have wondered, like, oh, what's going on? They keep all people giving a talk inside and not enjoying the sun outside. But however, there were quite a few people who came, up to about 65 people who came quite regularly. So then I recall at that time that the topic I was teaching on, one of the main topics was on patience. So then later I heard some comments from some people saying that actually they've learned something really useful for their practice. Therefore, they've learned something new. They said that they had actually befriended anger for many years. They thought anger was something really useful. So, but however, having heard your talk today, I began to understand that anger is not really useful. Actually, one should be practicing patience. And so that was like an eye-opener for them. So they made comments like that. So those who were at that time, when I gave a talk at the time, had come later, came here. And some that who have come to my talks here have gone up to the institute up in Queensland, Charity Institute. So you can see that there seems to have been some benefit in sharing that.
Yeah.
So also in Maroochydore, another town, small town here in Queensland, I was asked to give a talk in a coffee shop. So it might have been a little bit unusual to give a talk in a coffee shop, the Buddhist talk in a coffee shop. And so in fact, they stopped their normal trade of selling coffee at that time, and we had asked me to come and give a talk on Buddhism for about 2 hours. But then afterwards, they might have had, some people having their coffee there, so it might have helped them in business as well. So we can maybe end here for today. So a picnic is considered to be a time for a happy occasion, a good, joyous occasion. So in my hometown or province in Tibet, in Nekam, they have a particular term which actually translates literally as going out to have a happy time. Kikidam. Kikidam means to have a happy time. So then that on occasion when they call it this kiki, which is a equivalent to picnic time, having a picnic, then actually everyone, all the villagers would come out onto these nice green patios, beautiful green patios, and near the water, rivers. They all come outside and with their own milk. So on occasions like that, where all the villagers came out, these green, nice patios, and had a good time with nice foods. And the young children, of course, would play, get involved in the games. There's some elderly people would, just be there, but do their recite Om Mani Home. That would just be involved in reciting Om Mani Home. They're sort of like constantly engaged in that. Then some others, middle-aged people would engage in their own games of playing what we call there's the dice game, and also like card games, and then so what do you call mahjong? What do you call mahjong? Seems like some Jewish people have a similar sort of game as well. So there was not, on these occasions, usually there was not alcohol, not drinking much alcohol. In our village we didn't have that tradition. So then it was really a happy occasion, because going to picnic would have been happy even afterwards, because to maintain happiness. So while some go to a picnic in a stable condition, and then have to come back, having to be held by others, and wobbly and cannot walk properly.